And moving on to foster care in this country, 500,000 children in this country are in foster care. The outlook actually is pretty bleak for these kids. A study that tracks kids in the years after they leave foster care found some really terrible things. Number one, 1 in 4 probably don't have a high school diploma or a GED. 60% of them, if they're young men, have been convicted of a crime, and only about half of them were employed compared to 72% of their peers. So this morning there is a bipartisan effort in Congress to try to change some of these statistics, and leading that effort is the Democratic representative, California, Karen Bass, and Republican Representative Michelle Bachmann of Minnesota. They're co-chairs of the Congressional Foster Youth Congress. It's nice to have nice to have you both with me. Congresswoman Bachmann, if you don't mind, I'm going to ask you to start. Clearly, you are a foster mother to almost 24 kids, I believe. This is obviously linked to why you care about this issue, right?
It is. It's very personal for me. My husband and I actually saw a couple in church that were doing foster care, and we looked at each other and thought, you know, maybe we could do that as well. We both had broken hearts for at-risk kids. So we took in our first child. It was a good experience. We got a call from the agency, would we take another? We did. We got a call, would we take another? And we kept taking children, and over the years we had 23 children, and it was as much a blessing for us, if not more, than I think what we could offer to the kids as well. So if there's any people out there that are considering foster care, look into it. It's wonderful for everyone involved.
Congresswoman Bass, what's your connection to this?
Well, actually, I've been involved in the issue from a policy perspective since 1990. I formed a community organization called Community Coalition that was in response to the way crack cocaine was hitting so many communities. And one of the consequences of that epidemic in the 1980s was a number of children wound up in the foster care system. That's when the number of kids in our nation removed from home really exploded. And so I worked on it from a community basis, trying to influence policy on a county level. And then when I ran for state office, I was involved and formed a foster care caucus in the state legislature. So it was one of my big motivations for wanting to run for Congress, is to be able to work on this issue in a bipartisan fashion and to have a long-term strategy for improving the foster care system in our country.
What do you both hope to do? Because clearly, even though the numbers and the statistics that I just gave are really bad, and they go on and on, I've done the stories on this a number of times, doing anything in a bipartisan fashion right now in Congress I think is very, very hard. So what's your strategy at this point?
Well, I don't think that it's that hard. And you know, the Congresswoman and I have talked, and there are 2 other co-chairs. There's Tom Marino, who is a Republican from Pennsylvania, and Jim McDermott, who's a Democrat from Washington. The 4 of us co-chair the caucus, and all of us come together because we understand how important this issue is, and it's also an issue that has a positive ending. We can improve the quality of life for these children. I know it's something that we can succeed in Congress.
It's a difficult issue, but we are real optimists. Personally, I've seen the positive outcome in children's lives. One thing my husband said is that every child needs to know that at least one person is crazy about them and cares about them. And if we can have that level of care and the personal touch in a child, it makes a tremendous difference. But one thing that Karen and I have been working on and that we're very concerned about is the over-drugging of children with prescription drugs. Children in foster care in particular have an elevated level of having more drugs assigned to them. There are many children in foster care that have 4 and 5 psychotropic drugs. This is our first issue that we're working on in foster care, the over-drugging of children. It's very bipartisan. We believe very strongly in this because there is no partisanship when it comes to positive outcomes for kids.
That's a big issue, even outside of foster care as well. I think you're absolutely right.
And you know, one of the things that's exciting about Congress is that there's so many people there with so much expertise. So, for example, I mentioned one of our co-chairs, Congressman Jim McDermott. He's a child psychiatrist, so he has years of experience at this, and he was also the author of some very important legislation. So us working together with a long-term strategy, I'm convinced that we can make a big difference.
Let me ask you a question. As female legislators, and there's not a whole bunch of women in Congress, obviously.
That's for sure.
I don't need to tell the 2 of you. People have talked about in late days, especially around the whole Rush Limbaugh comments, that there's like an attack on women. Do you think that that's true? I know, Congresswoman Bachmann, you were talking to Piers Morgan about sort of the sense of outrage that you saw when it was an attack on the left, but when it came to the right, you didn't feel like people were outraged as well.
Well, I will tell you from personal experience, I couldn't even repeat on television what has been said about me. A judge recently ordered Twitter to identify a man who called for me to be not only raped and sodomized, but also killed. Now, this is serious, and I've had things said about me during the course of running for the presidency. There was zero outrage about these statements on the left, absolutely zero. This is something that is completely wrong, and I think when you see the overkill that's being done against Rush Limbaugh, and then you see the comments that were said about me, and absolutely no response whatsoever, there's no comparison here. And so why is it that there's outrage when it's an issue on the left, but there's zero outrage on the right? To me, it doesn't matter whether a woman is Republican or Democrat, or whether she's liberal or conservative. This sort of violent talk should not be acceptable for anyone.
And I think violent talk is absolutely unacceptable. I mean, look at what we all experienced as a nation last year with the wounding of one of our colleagues, and so it should definitely never be tolerated. But, you know, once again, in terms of the foster care issue, I think it's an opportunity for us to come together, to work together, and to develop an agenda for how we help these children. Because when you remove a child from home, it's really then we become the parents. And I think it's our obligation as legislators to make sure that these children are served well and that we take care of them just as we would take care of our own.
And the positive thing is we know we can. We know there are things that we can do to improve the quality of a child's life, and that's why we're coming together in this bipartisan way. We want to put aside any difference because we want to have the best interests of the child at stake.
Exactly.
All right. Well, thank you, ladies. I appreciate your time this morning, Congresswoman Bess and Congresswoman Backman, joining us this morning. Nice to have you both.
Thank you.